Wounds, wisdom, and the word. Wounds, wisdom, and the word. Now here are your hosts, Jamie and Doug.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wounds, Wisdom, and the Word. This is Doug Gregory. I'm here with my co-host, Jamie Shepard. Sorry, it's been a couple weeks since we've come to you. I used to think that spring was the busiest time of the year, but now I don't know if it's not fall or maybe it's just the whole year's busy. I don't know, but
agreed. We
are over the fall break season. I had my fall break the week before Jamie had her fall break, and so it didn't work out. Jamie was like, "We can record while I'm at the beach and all this," and I thought,
Jamie slept through the appointment.
No, not at the beach. Quit it.
Not on vacation.
Yeah, about 11:30. She's like, I forgot.
And I think we had planned to do it that morning at like 8:30 or something like that. I was like,
like 9 o'clock.
Everybody else be sleeping.
I wasn't holding my breath.
Yeah, good thing you didn't.
But today, we talked a lot about trauma so far. We've talked about, kind of how it manifests. And last episode, we talked about generational trauma and how those things pass down. And, it's one thing to look and say, okay, here's what's wrong with me. Or maybe this is what happened to me, or this is what got handed down to me. But now, what do you do? Right? And that's kind of the point of today's episode is we want to talk about some things that you can do. Some of them are, we kind of got them broke down, simple, medium, and hard, but really it's, things you could do stand in the middle of Walmart, or things maybe you do at home, and then things it's going to, it's going to be more in office and with professional help. So easy, medium, and hard. But before we do that, two things. We're going to talk about how the brain works, but also wounds, wisdom, and the word. Just a Bible verse today that we're going to start out with here is Proverbs 11:14. Where there's no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors, there's safety. In an abundance of counselors, there's safety. Why is that? Because everybody is out here looking for wisdom together. And, if I go and get wisdom from somebody else and check it and it's okay, then that's something I've gained. And that was kind of the idea behind me even wanting to start this podcast, is the mental health journey that I've taken. And I'm like, I had no clue. And I didn't want somebody to be stuck in that same spot of not having a clue. So trying to reach out. But I'll let Jamie, she's got our first visual aid of the day. I'll let her jump in here with the kind of the intro to how the brain works, because you kind of got to understand how the brain works to understand how the treatments work.
Yeah, and when Doug and I were brainstorming and planning this episode, I just was real honest with him and told him that I tend to get real nerdy when I talk about the brain. It's exciting, it's informative for me. I probably provide way too much information when I discuss this, right? Yeah. So Doug is holding me accountable today, but this, yeah, we sound effects, Doug. We still haven't done that, but so this is
before we get started. We got to tell the people. Jamie's like, I got my brain with me today, and then she's like, I'm gonna go get my brain, and then it was like,
couldn't find my brain.
Couldn't find my brain, and it's like the jokes abound. Sorry.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably going to be more that show up, but so this is half of my brain, okay? Just to give everybody an idea, I do have a whole brain, right? It's cute, right? Kind of looks like a butt from the back, actually. But this is your brain. It is squishy, right? But this is used for educational purposes. I actually use this quite a bit in my office with clients because we know what we feel, we know what we think, we know that our body does things all by itself. But we don't always know exactly how that stuff happens, right? So this brain is quite simple. The other side has a few more, names and colors, but for our purposes today, we don't need that. So when you're talking about mental health or emotional issues, struggles, troubles, you basically talk about three parts to the brain. Okay. You have this area, which is called the cortex. And what happens up here is all of the stuff that make us human. This is where the ability to talk, walk on two legs, think about things, compare things. And actually here, this is called the prefrontal cortex. That's where all of those higher level thinking, reasoning, decision making, that's where all that comes from. And honestly, this piece of our brain, it doesn't fully mature until between the ages of 23 and 25. Okay. So kind of explains some things that shall remain nameless in this moment. So cortex, right? That's basically the upstairs brain. Okay. Then you have this area here. You have this area here. Okay. This is kind of the middle brain. Now, here is sort of where your emotional, your limbic system really lives and operates. And as a part of that limbic system, that's where your emotions happen. And literally, Doug, emotions are nothing more than a tiny little chemical explosion in our brain. I mean, split seconds it takes these little explosions to happen. And the truth is, we cannot control those explosions. What we can be in control of is what happens after the explosion, right? So something happens, some event happens. And let's say we're standing in line at Walmart and some person cuts us off in line. And like we're already having a bad day. Somebody took our parking place out in the parking lot. Kids might have puked all over us, had to go home and change clothes, right? Explosion goes off right here. Oop, I keep messing that up. But right here, okay? Tiny little micro explosion. Chemicals start coursing through the brain, coursing through our body, and we become angry. Now, if we do nothing but just kind of ride the wave, it takes about 30 to 90 seconds for that wave to roll through our brain, through our body, and then just dissipate. But if we do not let that happen, what do you think happens?
Bad stuff starts happening.
Yeah, we get real big reactions. We might ram her buggy with our buggy. We might throw something at her. We might trip her. We might run our buggy into her car in the parking lot. Like the sky's the limit here, right? This would be why road rage incidents happen. So then back here, you have the survival part of your brain. Okay, this is your hind brain or lower brain, downstairs brain, also called the reptilian brain. And one of the reasons for that is because this is the first part that develops in utero. This is the part that controls our heart beating, our eyes blinking, our lungs breathing, our blood flowing. All of those survival things that we do involuntarily. Now, back in this area, there's a little almond-shaped gland called the amygdala. it is a troublemaker. Okay. It can also, however, be a lifesaver. And to be honest, that's actually what its job is. It's kind of like a fire alarm. You know, I'm sitting here in my house and right now things are quiet. But if one of my fire alarms starts going off, I'm going to react to that. I'm either going to get up and see what's going on, or if I smell smoke, I might run out into my front yard and just call 911 and be done. Right? You react to things to input that comes in here. Okay. This part of your brain is not in charge of the thinking. It is in charge of the doing. So, the thing to remember is a lot of times people become trapped back here. And in my world, a lot of times we say that those people are living in their downstairs brain. Because rather than living life, thinking about life, making decisions about life, they are simply reacting to life. So, that is my lowered and watered down nerdy version of the brain. So I'm actually going to let Doug give you a little better, maybe a real world explanation of everything that I just said.
That's all right.
Summary.
I mean, well, hold that up for just another second here. The frontal cortex, the part to be, right there. One of the reasons why people drink to numb pain is, and this is very, very oversimplified, but alcohol starts in the front of the brain and works backwards. That's why you do stupid things and why you have impaired motor function, and eventually gets back to the memory section. But it affects that. It literally attacks the frontal cortex first. But the part in the back, the survival brain, I call it an alarm system. And back in the 90s and the 2000s, it was very popular for people to go put an aftermarket alarm system on their car. And the problem with that is that they were usually turned up too sensitive. Like you could drive by with another car and set the alarm off and nobody's touched it. Well, the more things happen to you trauma wise, the more that alarm system gets sensitive and more sensitive, more sensitive. Like Jamie said, it's a lifesaver. You step off a curb and the bus blows its horn and you don't think about, I wonder if that's a Freightliner, right? You move. And the problem is that as that alarm system gets more and more sensitive, more and more things trigger it. And when you're triggered, like I say, you're not thinking. You're just simply reacting. Your heart rate goes up. Vagus nerve gets triggered. It actually collapses pieces of your lungs. That's why you have trouble breathing when you feel that way. It's the other nasty habit that it has. Okay, the upper brain part is like a black box on an aircraft. When an aircraft crashes, one of the things they look for is the black box. It's got a recorder in it. It records all the time. Well, your alarm system has the ability to turn your mind's black box off. You ever been in a car wreck and you can't remember it? Right? You were awake the whole time. Why can't you remember it? Because your alarm system said, danger, danger, turn the box off. And it's actually possible to either, have bits or flashes of a traumatic event or have absolutely no memory of it. And your mind doesn't have memory of it, but as we're going to see, your body does, even though your mind doesn't.
Well, and you talking about this up here is that black box. The information is received here, right? Like talking about the car crash. Information is received here. It passes down and is stored here. But guess what? Recall, which has to go from the bottom up. A, it's much more difficult. But B, your brain is not going to give you all of it, especially if it's a traumatic experience. That's why there are often pieces missing. It's not that you or that your brain I should say. It's not that your brain did not take in all the data. It absolutely took in all the data, but it is built for safety. Like your brain's number one motive, or your brain's number one job, is to keep you safe.
Well, and I guess we need to say at this point in time, that's the way God wired that system to work, right? We're not dealing something that's a flaw or a misfunction. Um, you know, in a person who grew up with a great mother and father and didn't experience childhood trauma and all that, that system functions normally. But unfortunately, not everybody grows up that way. Or not everybody, you know, has a life that's just, you know, without major incident. So, and one of the things we're going to see too as we go through these treatments, okay, the things that, you know, the system that gets hung up that God designed, there's also things that unhang that system, and those also exploit God's design. So I guess now let's talk about treatments, Jamie. It's kind of enough of our of our explanation.
Well, so we're going to kind of go through these simple to hard, right? So your terminology here, though, is Walmart stuff. Okay, so the very first group of things we're going to talk about are things you can do in the middle of Walmart. You know, I used that illustration a couple minutes ago of somebody cutting you off in line and cutting you off in the parking lot. And, you know, you can't sit down in the middle of Walmart and do a full on meditation, right? I mean, you could. I'll back up on that. You could. But there are any number of outcomes that aren't necessarily positive should you choose to do that in the middle of Walmart. The least of which,
I'm just thinking weirdo all three,
right? Absolutely. Okay, so, but what you can do if you're in the middle of Walmart and let's just say you have a panic attack for whatever reason, maybe your nervous system is just overloaded that day. Maybe there's a thunderstorm outside and you are one of those people that have a really big storm anxiety, and there's lightning and there's a really big clap of thunder and you just fall apart right there. Deep breathe, right? That is at the top of the list. And I've had a number of clients when I brought that, breathing don't work for me. Okay, it's fine. That's the other probably disclaimer, is that some of these more self-help items that we're going to talk about and present, they don't work for everybody, right? And the idea is that you try them.
And work here is a subjective term. Like,
I would agree too. Yeah.
I would, you know, I have dealt with my fair share of panic attacks, and breathing does not turn the switch off. Breathing does not take it away. But breathing, you know,
get you through.
Breathing has definitely kept me from destroying things and, you know, not flipping out on somebody. And, you know, a lot of times when you're going through this stuff, you are fighting a war against yourself.
Yep.
So when you say, oh, it doesn't work, well, no, it's not going to fix it. But, you know, it allows you to shoot back. Like literally one of the early counselors I had and was not trauma focused was talking about breathing. And it's like, you know, it should take, you know, when you get anxious, it should take 30, 45 seconds at the very most. And I come home that night and I thought, okay, I got this new tool. I'm gonna use it. And I remember, like, come home, something happened, got spooled up, and I thought, okay, everybody went to bed. I thought, okay, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna try this. And like my 30 to 45 seconds in, when it's supposed to be over, was like I can literally feel a part of my inside of me is like, oh no, you did not. And it was 30 minutes of sitting there and like, because what you're doing, that the alarm system is firing your vagus nerve trying to take over. And like the only thing of all the responses it does for you, the only one you have control over consciously is breathing. So you're fighting yourself.
Yep.
And,
well,
it was
and
30
when I was
minutes.
talking about those little explosions earlier, right?
Yeah.
We got no control over those. It's only what happens after.
Yeah.
But also what happens after is more often than not a designed body response, right? And that's what you're talking about is, the hyper breathing, or I hate to call it hyperventilation, but the fast breathing, the slow breathing, the inability to take in a full breath. All of those things are body responses, right? But by taking a moment to practice some deep breathing, general rule of thumb, in through your nose, out through your mouth, but you want to release it slower than you took it in, right? So at the beginning of your exercise, you're probably going to pull that breath in pretty deep and pretty quickly. But then when you go to let it out, it's more like, right? And at the top of the breath, you hold it for like a 2 count, 5 count, whatever you can manage in that moment, right? There's also 4-4 breathing, 4-7-8 breathing. Doug was talking about, what did you call that?
The terminology I heard it called was a psychological sigh. The core idea behind breathing is that if you had yourself hooked up on a very advanced heart monitor, you could watch when you breathe in, your heart rate goes up, and when you breathe out, your heart rate goes down. Yep. So, like, the psychological sigh is something they figured out from doing sleep studies, and it's something we do involuntarily at night during REM sleep. But you breathe in, you take a deep breath, and then when you get, it's just almost as full as you can get, you hold it just a second, but then you take another little, just extra inhale at the top. So, and that extra little skip right there is something God wired it that way. It's something we do. We don't even know that we do. But I've had moments of, sometimes when that would help me when regular just trying to breathe does not. And like I say, it's not just an instant, let me take a happy pill and everything's fine. But you're fighting back control for your body, literally. Is what it's
well, and the key term here, especially as we're talking about the easy and the medium stuff, okay, the Walmart stuff and the at home stuff, we're talking more about coping mechanisms or coping strategies or coping skills. These are not things that are going to make the issue go away. These are things that are going to help you manage yourself in the middle of whatever's happening, right?
And let you live to fight another day.
Exactly. So sometimes the deep breathing, it's not going to stop the panic attack like you throw in cold water on a fire, but it will help you get through it. And a lot of times it shortens the time of those panic attacks, right? Another one that another technique, breathing is great, and there are a lot of them, is grounding techniques. I love grounding techniques for stopping a spiral, right? And that's what a lot of my clients will tell me sometimes. Well, I was spiraling. And overall, it's a very similar definition from everybody when I ask them, well, tell me what that looks like, right? Because Doug could use the word spiraling and I could use the word spiraling, and we could mean 2 completely different things, right? However, probably some overlap. So grounding technique is all about bringing your mind back in touch with your body and in the moment. So if I'm sitting in a doctor's office and I'm getting nervous, more and more nervous about my appointment, right? A lot of people don't like the dentist. That's probably a real good example, right? So you're sitting in the dentist office waiting to go in there, and in the background you hear the drill. You hear it. Yes, that unmistakable whine. And now, things getting right. You get spiraled, you get spooled up, as Doug likes to say. Take a moment, put your hands, so make sure both your feet are on the floor. Just sit comfortably in the chair, take your hands, rest them on the top of your legs. And begin, kind of close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. Start at the top of your head and just notice your physical body. Notice how heavy that your head feels. And then allow your attention to move down over your shoulders and maybe wiggle your shoulders a little bit like this. And then now you move down over your torso. And now I'm noticing how heavy that my back is feeling against the chair. The pressure of my back against the chair. And even down across my bottom in the backs of my legs, like how heavy I'm feeling sitting in the chair. And then now I'm going down my legs, and man, my feet are getting heavy against the floor. It almost feels like they weigh 100 pounds apiece. Now, chances are, if anybody did that, like followed along with that exercise while I just talked through it, they probably feel like they weigh 1,000 pounds right now. And that's the idea, right? You're bringing your attention back to your body and back to the now. Because panic, anxiety, waves of emotion carry it away from reality.
Because
so these grounding, yeah, go ahead.
If you keep in that loop, if you keep in that loop and you're not grounding or breathing, or what's going to happen is you're in, rumination's the right word, but you're in this cycle, and your alarm system says danger, danger, even though you're sitting in the office and you're not in any physical danger. You can't convince your alarm system of that. And then at worst case, you'll disassociate. I mean, you'll be zoned out like a zombie, or I had a dissociative panic attack one time, and it literally was like looking at myself laying in the bed, and I'm balled up in a ball, screaming. My wife's on top of me, thinking I'm having a heart attack, and I'm looking at myself like, "What are you doing? Stop it!" but I couldn't.
Well, and that's what these techniques often help with, right? Because when you talk about that dissociation, by the way, everybody has the ability to do that. Like, we're going to go back to our Walmart reference. Dude, I hate standing in line. I hate standing in line. It feels like such a complete waste of my valuable time, right? So I often daydream or about something more pleasant. Maybe I'm visiting the beach in my mind, right? Maybe I'm watching my favorite TV show in my head, or thinking about a book that I read recently. That is actually a mild form of dissociation. Now, is that unhealthy? No. Because again, everybody does it. It's just a built-in coping strategy. But are there pretty severe forms of that? Yeah, absolutely. But the grounding exercises stop that cycle, right? And they stop that from getting any worse than it might already be. Also something that's another great tool in this grounding is like progressive muscle relaxation, right? A lot of times these episodes that someone may have, it's not only what's going on in their mind, but it's about what's going on in their body too. Maybe they're shaking. Maybe their palms are sweating. Maybe they are tapping their leg and they just can't stop it. Maybe there's a part of their body that's, just vibrating uncontrollably, right? Or maybe they're having muscle spasms, something like that. The progressive muscle relaxation, and by the way, you can find a lot of great tools on YouTube that you can, if you feel like you can't do this on your own, right? This would turn into an at-home exercise. Maybe not in the middle of Walmart, you turn on progressive muscle relaxation. I don't know, maybe you do. But it just walks you through how to tense up certain muscles and then relax them. And then you tense up another group of muscles and you relax those. And then you tense it, right? And so those are just some examples of grounding. Sometimes when breathing isn't quite enough to slow down, the runaway train that feels like it is your head, adding the grounding techniques is enough. So,
yeah. So I guess that key weighs us into the at home, the medium section.
yeah. So now what we're going to talk about are still relatively simple things that a person can do. But they're not necessarily things you're going to do in the middle of Walmart. Okay. These are more, I'm going to do these things for myself at home. Right. So this kind of ties into the grounding, and that's just body practices, right? So stretching, yoga, going for a walk, sitting in a chair on your porch and rocking. That's my favorite, by the way. And then, just it's about the movement of the body that often helps relieve the pressure that's going on up here, right? So, again, yoga, I can't emphasize the benefits of that practice enough. Prayer and meditation. This ties in with our word for sure. Psalm 46:10 comes to mind. Be still and know that I am God. We don't have to be still when we pray. There's nothing in scripture that tells us we have to do that, but I think there is a great value in just sitting with God. That prayerful, almost meditative state where it's just you and him. Just you and him in that moment. And even if you don't know what to say, that's okay, because he's got you. He knows your heart, he knows your mind, and he knows above all, anyone else on this planet, he knows what you need. And just giving some space for that. Yeah, one of my favorite things to recommend. Journaling is another excellent at-home practice to do. And I encourage people, don't just journal about the bad days. Journal about the good days. Journal about the wins. I think one of the greatest things for people to do is to journal first thing in the morning when you wake up and at night before you go to bed. Because when you're sitting there at night before you go to bed, you can go back and look at what you wrote that morning, right? And go, I accomplished exactly what I wanted to today. Why was I feeling like I did it? Or why was I beating myself up for not being productive? Well, you got lots of evidence to look at and go, I did do something today. Even if what you did was journal twice, Let's see, what else is a good one? I would also say at home. What's that?
You'd mentioned walking.
Yes, walking is a great one. And I will tell you, a lot of times a companion, right? That's the relational side of us. Not every situation requires talking about. Sometimes just the presence of another human being. Just the connection with another person. You don't have to say a word. You can get out and go walk a mile and say nothing, but it may do you wonders of good. And I think that that's important to just highlight too, and that is our relationships with other people. Having a person, they don't have to know your whole story. Just somebody that you can invite into the process. Hey, look, I'm doing these things for myself. Hey, look, I'm working on trying to process some things from my past. And I'm having good days and I'm having bad days. Would it be possible for me to just kind of text you if I'm having one of those bad days? And all I need from you is just reassurance. Whatever that, you send me a Bible verse, right? Probably. Well, I mean, I guess you could take a companion to Walmart. Oh, by the way, 4-legged companions count. So, for all of you dog and cat people, even if you're a bird people, right? I know people got pet birds. My uncle has one named Dewey. Love that bird. Been a while since I've seen him, but so do you, Doug? Do you have any thoughts on any of those before
I know.
start talking about the big stuff?
Well, you talking about walking, like that's one of the things with my. We're going to talk about some of the brain spotting here in a minute, and part of that process for me, kind of one of my symptoms toned down, and another one come out, and that was nausea. And like, I'm not talking about like I eat something nausea. I'm talking about like something happened, and instantaneously, about ready to throw my toenails up. And the only thing that would take it away was go walk, like get outside, go walk around in a circle. Like, I even had to, even one of the first times I had to use it was actually in Walmart. And everybody was in the freezer aisle. I'm like, gotta go.
Holla.
About to be cleaned up on aisle 2 if I don't get out of here. Like, where are you going? Gotta go
for a walk.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll be around. We were also going to mention creative things as an outlet at home.
Yes. And that was, I forgot that because it's your area.
I took, got this one Monday. I was not in great shape. It took me 2 hours to like get clothes on to go outside to the Denali, get my laptop out of the back of the Denali because I needed to ship a package. And like finally got up and got rolling and just was not in a great space and went out there and worked on that knife handle for probably 30, 45 minutes. And I put that in my hand and I was just like, yes. And it was a better day after that. Something as simple as, whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think you make a good point. Like it doesn't have to be something as elaborate as knife making. Everyone has different skills and talents, and maybe you're not an artist, or maybe you can't do woodwork or anything with your hands. Sit down and color.
Yeah. Well, 90% of this was not done on that day. It just so happened that was the last step, and I just so happened to go out there, and you kind of get the payoff. Like, I mean, but yeah.
Yeah, just anything you can do to tap into those creative senses, that can be a great outlet.
Yeah.
So, I guess that kind of brings us to the deeper end of the pool, and these are not things that you do at Walmart or that you do at home. These are things that are done in the therapy office, right? And I know that it may feel like that's a really big jump from what we were talking about to, oh my gosh, now I got to go to therapy. What? But honestly, that's kind of how it works. Like, I would love to tell you that that is what it is. I would love to tell you that there are other things you can do.
Well, let's be honest.
But
You're going to learn. You're going to learn most of Walmart and home stuff at therapy.
yes, absolutely. And more, right? Like there's
Yeah.
probably a ton of things that you and I have not even talked about today, that we could have spent an entire hour just on talking about the simple stuff like that you could do at Walmart.
Yeah.
But so probably the most popular and maybe what some people have heard about would be EMDR. And that is called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So EMDR. Now I'm going to pull my brain back out. Okay. I'd put it away for a few minutes, but we're going to have to look at my brain again. Okay. So one of the reasons that I even have this thing is because I use it to educate my clients about EMDR and brain spotting, both of which I am trained in and I utilize as trauma treatments. They can be used for things such as anxiety and depression. Usually, anxiety and depression are symptoms of something deeper, right? Now, that is not 100% the case, just as life goes. Nothing is, final, or absolute. So, where, Doug, if you're looking at this brain model, and here, maybe this, let me make it a whole brain. Okay. If you're looking at this, where would a person's eyes be?
Underneath your other hand, where your other hand just was.
Right here?
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of what you're thinking? Yeah.
Yep.
So if you put your hand on your forehead, you're touching that prefrontal cortex, right? And as we know, our eyes sit just below that. Now, the thing to remember is that your eyes are attached to your brain by your optic nerve. Your optic nerve just so happens to run right here. Okay. And the reason that that is so significant is because that is your memory center. That is where your limbic system lives. That is where your memories, your emotions, all of that happens right here in the middle of your brain. So your eyes are a direct link to the things that are locked there, right? Because if you remember, I talked about information passes from the top down, and it can come from the bottom up, but it's much more difficult. Now,
And if that black box got turned off, then I guess one of the learning things that I've learned and figured out and didn't realize is some of this stuff you can't talk it out. It's not stored there. You can't access it by talking about it. You've got to have this other process, and like you're talking about, the optical nerve has a superhighway connection into the part of the brain that you need to deal with.
yes.
Sorry.
Yes. And that is the premise of EMDR. I won't go too nerdy because I could actually talk about that in Brainspotting for a whole hour, just about how they came about. But Dr. Frances Shapiro is the creator, the mother, if you want to call her that, of EMDR. And she just kind of self-discovered it, right? She herself was going through a difficult time, happened to be out on a walk, okay, in nature, yep, pounding the pavement. And she was just kind of looking. There were some trees, she was kind of in a wooded area. And she started watching birds fly back and forth between the trees and then just kind of what she realized is that by the time she got done with that walk, she felt better. Like, in other words, the thing that had been so heavy on her mind and plaguing her, it was still there, but she felt better about it. Like, she felt more equipped to deal with it. So she started researching, as any good doctor does, and that's where EMDR came from. There is a specific technique it can be utilized, what we're talking about it, or when I say technique, something called bilateral stimulation, right? And in the same way that my brain here is split in two, our actual brains are split in two. You have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere, right? Well, there are connections that run between the two hemispheres, but sometimes they don't work exactly like they're supposed to. So this bilateral stimulation allows both sides of your brain to become involved in the processing. And you need that. You need that. So that looks a lot of different ways. As far as what I utilize something called tappers. I don't have those with me, but they, my clients hold these little things that buzz, basically, one side to the other. I can control speed, time, and all of that plays a big part in the processing part of EMDR. So I won't go any further into that very complicated process, but the outcome is, or the goal, I should say, the goal is that whatever hard thing you brought into therapy is now not as big as it once was. So, a lot of times, or go ahead.
I was going to say the idea is none of this is going to take what happened away. The idea is to make it less triggering and less volatile is the word I'll use, less reactive in your system. So, right now I've got a browser window or, Chrome opened up over here, and it's got different tabs. So what you're doing, with this in a very, high level way is you're closing tabs. When you process that out, it's not hung, and you're that part of your brain can kind of go. Mm-hmm. And if you want to kind of see the illustration of how this worked vaguely, but like Disney's movie Inside Out, mm-hmm. like they get a lot of the psychology right. And like when sadness touches that orb, that's a memory, and it turns from a golden happy memory to a sad memory, you can add information to those, and that's the reprocessing part. So that's kind of the underlying, you're not removing it. It's just not, it just doesn't sound the red alarm when it comes up. That smell or that sound or whatever. Yep. doesn't take you there.
No, it doesn't completely tear you down, right? And I'll kind of give a brief overview of the analogy that I use to kind of help clients just understand trauma processing in general. Keep in mind that this is true for EMDR, it's true for Brainspotting, it's true for other ones that I hopefully will have time to talk about, and even talk therapy, okay? So on the left side, you've got a closet, just the messiest closet you can imagine. It is full of junk. You have no idea what's even in there, okay? And it's so full that when you go to open the door to put something else in it, it's that whole, you got to open it real fast and shove it in and close it, right? You got to open, shove, close real fast because it's so full, stuff going to start coming out on you, okay? On the right side, you got a filing cabinet. Typically, with a filing cabinet, it's organized. There's some type of system, whether it's alphabetical or topical or, whatever. What trauma therapy works to do, or trauma processing, is to take the stuff out of the messy closet and clean it up and organize it and put it in the filing cabinet. We're not doing away with any of the valuable things out of that closet. We're cleaning it up. We're making it make sense, right? Because if you leave that closet alone and you never touch it, At some point, you're going to go and open that door, and what's going to happen? Yeah, you're going to be buried. You're going to be buried by all kinds of stuff because you have zero control over how much comes out, when it comes out, or what. And that's not healthy, right? I can go to the filing cabinet and I can pull out a memory, pleasant or unpleasant. But I can look at that memory and it is now what's called a working memory for me, meaning it's valuable. It taught me something, or it helped me learn something about me, about my life, right? So EMDR does that, as well as Brainspotting, right? So Brainspotting was actually born from EMDR. A man by the name of Dr. David Grand. The concepts, very similar. Outcomes, it depends on who you ask about that. Some people believe that EMDR is more effective. Other people believe Brainspotting rules the roost. I will tell you, I have seen progress with both. It's about the client, which is one of the reasons why I am trained in both. Because if I start with one and it's not working, or it's not what the process is too much, then I can go to the other, right? So Brainspotting also utilizes your eyes, but rather than moving them, which is what you do with EMDR, it's one spot, right? And the kind of the premise behind that is that where you look affects how you feel. If you've ever caught yourself staring at a completely inanimate object, just that blank, far away gaze. Maybe somebody comes up and is even talking to you, and until you snap out of it, you have no idea what they've even said to you, right? Maybe even for a moment you forgot where you were or what was going on. That's actually called gaze spotting, and that is a mild form of Brainspotting. Now, what I do in my office and what other practitioners do, much more involved, right? Much more, okay, we're going to attack this thing and we're going to find the spot that is associated with this thing and we're going to process that. So I use a pointer. I also add auditory stimulation. It just kind of helps with the process, makes it a little more tolerable for most people. So that's kind of those two. The next one that I am using more and more in my practice is something called internal family systems. And I did not know this, but apparently there is a TV show out there called Mr. Robot that, if anybody has watched that, I have not, but I had a client tell me about it. Actually, a client I've been doing some IFS with. And she was like, oh my gosh, I watched this show and like it just made everything make sense. And I'm like, okay. Internal family systems works off of the idea that we have multiple fragmented selves that come together to make a whole. And that whole is the self, right? So Doug is a minister. He's also a husband and a father and a friend and a coworker. Each one of those versions of Doug exist in his head. Now, we're not talking about old school multiple personality disorder. It's not called that anymore. It's actually called DID. But these are, if Doug is standing in the podium on a Sunday morning and he's preaching a sermon, Doug, who's in charge at that moment?
Preacher.
Yeah, Doug the preacher. Okay. So Doug the preacher is running the show. Everybody else is still there. They're kind of hanging out in the background. And what happens a lot in trauma or when we experience really hard things is there are pieces of ourselves that get exiled, right? Maybe it's a little boy, maybe it's a young girl, maybe it's a teenager, maybe it's a young adult, or maybe it's an older version of us if whatever happened to us happened to us late, late in life. So the idea or the goal with IFS is to reintegrate all pieces of self. Richard Schwartz is kind of well, he's not kind of, he is the man behind that concept. There are some excellent books out there. If anybody's interested, they can shoot us an email and I'll be happy to send you a list. But, it's something you can read about on your own. But in terms of the reintegration and really understanding what's going on, you kind of need a therapist for that, or a counselor, somebody trained in the concept, right? I've had a lot of recent progress with IFS. Some afraid of EMDR or of even brain spotting because they're just not sure that they're ready for something to be unlocked or revealed or to face what they already know is there. IFS tends to be a little gentler. It does, take a little bit more time. But honestly, Doug, all therapy takes time. And that's what everybody out there needs to understand is chances are real good you didn't become who you are, warts and all, overnight. You're not going to change all those things at one time overnight either.
Right.
And then, of course, you have talk therapy, good old psychotherapy. And within talk therapy, there are a lot of different modalities that can be used. CBT, DBT, EFT. That's a great one, not only for couples, but for individuals as well. But you've
ABC,
also got
EFD.
Yeah, pretty much XYZ. But you've got, even structural therapy, strategic therapy. Sometimes people are just looking for things that can help them, right? So something called strategic brief therapy is a great fit for them. It's kind of, hey, let's identify the problem. And now what can I do to fix the problem? And for some people, it's really that simple. Not everybody fits into that category. And sometimes people find short-term, relief from things, but it's those deeper rooted issues that go unattended that cause the biggest issues. So,
Well, and it's peeling an onion. I mean,
tears and all, by the way.
Yeah.
Like you're probably gonna cry.
It's and you'll think you got something figured out, and maybe you do have that piece figured out. But then, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep. Yeah, and another one that I didn't really talk a lot about, mainly because I don't have any training in this one, is somatic experiencing. That one, I do use pieces of it because it's a concept, it's a part of Brainspotting and EMDR actually, but and even sometimes IFS, but it's that you process your body, right? It's not all about what's up here. It's actually more about what's locked away in here. So I think I'm done. I think I've talked a lot.
Well, and the point of this, like I say, is maybe give you some tools that you didn't know about, but kind of the purpose behind all this is to take some of the mystery away. If you made it this far,
hope.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. To give you some hope that if you're in this situation, you're not You're not just a screwed up mess for the rest of your life. You don't have to be.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be better, you can be better.
Yep.
You got to go search it out, and you got to do the work. Is it fair that, maybe something happened to you and you got to do no, but what do you want? You want to be better or not?
Mm-hmm. Or do you want to be bitter? You want to be better, or do you want to be bitter?
Yep.
And I'll say too, just final thought maybe, in the same way that our bodies were built by God to heal a cut on our finger. When if we're in the kitchen and we slice our finger open, or even those wonderful little paper cuts that everybody gets, we don't consciously have to tell ourselves to go heal that cut. Our body just does it, right? That programming, that innate thing that God designed us with takes over. And that same thing exists for our brains. That same healing is possible for the brain and for the body and for the soul. We just have to invite it.
In the words of the Adam Sandler movie, you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, I think on that note, we're going to put you out of your misery. God bless you. Love you. Until next time.